Welcome to a new series of videos that I'm going to put together, which is going to document my Microsoft certification journey. To give you some context or some background to why I've decided to do this and why I've decided to actually try and record this, as a separate piece to what I'm already doing around things like the Cloudy with a Chance of Insights podcast, etc., is that when I was doing the last round of studying for some of the certifications, I found it really useful for me to do an internal piece. And for those that are watching on the IBM network, you can, I think, still see those available for the SC 900. But I found it really helpful for me to sort of document some of the key points that I came across on that. So either, as I said, either a key point or something perhaps that I was trying to get my head around. So I felt it really actually quite useful to sort of lay out what that meant and actually sort of present it. And it was a way that I found that I learned quite well. I don't intend to do this as more of a study guide. I think there's people like John Saville, for example, that do this really, really well. And I don't really want to sort of compete, for want of a better word, with that scenario. But I thought that this is actually primarily probably more for my benefit than anybody else's. So if you find this useful, great. If not, then fine. It's actually still helping me get through this. Now, the reason for this is that I was on a call the other day and one of my leadership people made a comment, which was probably a tongue-in-cheek comment, wasn't probably meant to be taken seriously by me. But for those that do watch the podcast, you probably know that I do tend to take these things quite literally. And I was sitting there going, okay, so this person's challenged me basically to get every single Microsoft certification. But what does that really mean? In terms of where I am at the moment, and again, just for purely clarity purposes, I've got SC 900, I've got AZ 900, I had 104, but I didn't renew that. And for those that are in the know, that a lot of the Microsoft certifications, minus the 900s, have a renewal. So they're valid for, I think, a year, and then you basically have to do like a knowledge check just to confirm that you're still up and current with what they're doing. But I missed the window for the 104. I also have a couple of the sort of SharePoint, Exchange, Office 365 certifications, which I also have to go and double check to make sure they're either valid or whether there's a replacement certification for those, or whether I need to redo those as well. So I looked at that and I thought, well, okay, hang on a second. Let's have a review of how those certifications are structured. And I've already mentioned 900, and some people might be going, what does that mean? Well, basically, Microsoft break down their certifications into sort of technology area, and then by I'm going to call it difficulty, but that's probably a little bit unfair or not quite the word to use. So you go from sort of foundation, associate, expert, and then speciality or specialty, depending on your pronunciation or usage of that word. So the 900 certifications, despite the sort of high number, are actually the entry level. So AZ 900 is the entry level into the Azure track. SC 900 is the entry level into the security track, AI 900 for AI, DP 900 for data, etc., etc. So the 900 is the sort of entry level. I don't think, and I'm going to have to validate and possibly put a note in, that the 900s are a prerequisite for anything else. So you could just go and do AZ 104, for example, without having to do 900. Then you go from the foundations to the associate level certifications, and they tend to be more role-based, or at least how Microsoft perceive a role to be. So, for example, you have an Azure Administrator certification, which is AZ 104, the one I just mentioned. You also have AZ 204, which is the Azure Developer Associate. So you can see they're trying to sort of point this at specific roles that you might do within the Microsoft Cloud space. And then you move on from there to the expert certifications. So, for example, in Azure, that would be the 305, AZ 305, which is the Azure Solutions Architecture Expert, which is, again, supposed to be the sort of pinnacle, I suppose, for that Azure track going through there. Now, 305 has a prerequisite, which is the AZ 104. So you have to do the AZ 104 before you do the 305. And I also already mentioned the sort of DevOps or developer track. So the expert certification in that track is the AZ 400, which is the DevOps Engineer Expert. That one gives you a choice. So some of the certifications give you a choice. And I'm going to put a link in this video to a really helpful sort of graphic that sort of goes through all these different permutations and what you need and what you don't need. But anyway, the AZ400 gives you an option of prereqs. So you can either go from the 104, so the administrator route into that, or you can go from the 204, which is the developer associate route, into that same. And some of the certifications, as I said, do that. Then you've got the specialty certifications, and now they tend to focus and go into some depth, is my understanding, around a particular product or third-party solution in Azure. So, for example, SAP has a specialty certification. Then you've got AVD or Azure Virtual Desktop has a specialty certification. And then you also get, I'm not quite entirely sure why, but you've got the Purview specialty one as well, which has been defined as a specialty, even though I'm not sure that that's really the case from my viewpoint anyway. So that's the way that the certifications are structured. So you have a technology track, and then that is broken down into sort of foundationals, i.e. entry level, associate, so the sort of role-based sort of process, and then an expert within that level, within that same track. Then the specialty ones. Then comes how I'm going to approach that. And I've already mentioned that I've got 2 of the SC 900s. I didn't renew the 104. And I've got a couple of the Office 365 SharePoint Exchange certifications, which may need to be renewed or tweaked in some manner or other. Which then leads me to how I'm going to approach this challenge. Now, luckily, I haven't been given a time frame, or haven't given myself a time frame to be more accurate. And that's primarily because it's difficult to judge how long some of this is going to take with work commitments and other activities, home life, for example. So I then had to figure out how I was going to prioritize that. And I was split between 2 approaches. One was to sort of go down the sort of more traditional architecture route of doing, 104 to 305 within the architecture space, and then going from there and doing, the similar sort of piece. But the way that I looked at this, particularly with the way that my role appears to be evolving within IBM, is that I was going to look at actually doing all the 900 certifications once, because that provides the sort of breadth, no depth potentially, but breadth, which sort of fits into the way that I'm sort of traditionally been around the Microsoft cloud space over the last 5 or 6 years. And then from there, I would prioritize where I thought the business impact would be much better or would be greater. So within those 900, I'd start with the AI 900 and then the DP 900, which is obviously the AI, the artificial intelligence. So that's going to be the sort of Copilot, OpenAI, Azure AI service stack, etc., etc. And then the DP 100, which will be more about the data side within that. And that seemed to be a logical piece, because that is where obviously a lot of the Microsoft focus, especially if you look at Build 25, which was a week ago when I'm recording this, the focus is heavily on the AI elements. And obviously you need the data to power, for want of a better word, that AI piece. And then I thought I'd actually go down that sort of data and AI technical track and get the certifications going from the associate to the expert ones in that route. I would then probably look at doing the development piece, followed by the security, and then finally wrap up with the AZ, possibly with the Dynamics, although I'm not entirely sure whether I'm going to include the Dynamics and Power Platform in this piece. I will update you if I decide either way around how that's going to work. As I said, I haven't given myself a deadline to complete that challenge. However, what I have said, and this goes back to how I found doing this, even though I don't think anybody actually watched them internally, I could be wrong, but I don't think they did. I found that just actually the process of sitting here, creating a small deck, creating a script, and going through and sort of even just talking aloud around a particular process, technology area, configuration option, whatever, actually really helped me sort of cement some of that knowledge in my brain. And okay, yes, they were just the 900s, and I'm sure that some of the more sort of role-based or areas where I haven't really spent a lot of time focused in the past might be a bit more tricky to do that. But it worked for me. So what I did say when I took this challenge on internally anyway, was that I would create a series of short form videos, ideally probably no longer than 10 minutes, where I would go through one particular topic that I thought was interesting or important, or I struggled with. And to do this might help me sort of get my head around that particular piece. So what I intend to do is on a weekly basis at least, and it won't start straight away because I'm on annual leave for the next 2 weeks after I've recorded this video. But what I would do is go and actually create those videos and upload them. Now, ideally a minimum of one a week, but obviously depending on how much time, what the subject matter is, I might well do more. But keep an eye on this channel. It's not going to be coming under the typical podcast channel, even though the logo is actually up on the screen there. But it will come through on a separate feed within the same piece. And by all means, please comment. Let me know how you think this is going to go, whether you think it's a good idea, whether you think my prioritization is daft, whether you like the formats, etc., etc. As I said, I don't want to have this as being like a big, hour-long study guide or a deep dive into a particular area that's really going to sort of help with that. I'm hoping that this will be sort of like, as I said, like a short, sharp bit around a particular process. You might have seen that I've done similar things around conditional access policies or access packages, and those are the sort of bite-sized bits I took out from doing the internal processes. So the way I see it is going to be very similar to that. But please let me know in the comments, obviously, rate it, subscribe, etc., depending on the platform that you might be viewing this on. And, let me know and keep an eye out for the next session, which will be something around the AI 900 certification coming soon.